Now that you've learned some of the basics of breaking up a character with Photoshop and Illustrator, I want to show you some specific tricks for creating those perfectly circular overlaps at the joints that we keep talking about. So let's pretend that you've got a leg here that needs to be divided into an upper leg and a lower leg, and it needs to have that perfectly circular overlap at the knee. Now, in order to do this, we need to have our circular marker guides marking out our joints. Now, we need these also for rigging, but they also come in incredibly handy for this part of the process. So let's go ahead and open up those markers, and we're going to find the left knee marker. There it is right there. And what we're going to do is we're going to command click on the image icon for that layer, and that will select that little circle and create a little circular selection for us. Now we're going to go down to that left leg, and let's isolate it by hitting Option and clicking on the eyeball there, just so we isolate just that layer. And let's zoom in on it a little bit as well. Oops, not quite that much. And we're going to grab the rectangular marquee tool, and we're going to hold down the Shift key, and we're going to click and drag a selection over the lower leg, and we're going to go right up to halfway in between that circular selection. Now, you don't have to be like super scientific about it. You can just eyeball it, but you want to get pretty darn close to right in the middle of that circular selection. Now we're going to duplicate that leg layer. So I'm going to right click and hit duplicate layer, and we'll call this left leg lower, and then we're going to hit Shift Command I. That's going to invert this selection, so we're no longer selecting this area, we're selecting the area around the selection, and then we'll just hit the delete key. And let's actually turn off the original leg here so we can see exactly what's happening. Hit the delete key, and now you can see we have the lower leg separated with this rounded top that will be part of our circular overlap. Now let's do the same thing with the upper leg. So I'm going to deselect. I'm going to go back up to my left knee marker, command click on the icon to select that circle. Then we're going to turn off the lower leg, we'll turn on the full leg. Now, if you're a little nervous about this process, you could go ahead and duplicate this layer again to make the upper leg and hang on to the full leg for safety. But I'm just going to go ahead and use this layer here. So we're going to rename this left leg upper. And again, I'm going to grab my rectangular marquee tool, and this time I'm going to select the upper part of the leg. Again, right down to halfway between that circle. I'm going to let go, and then again, Shift Command I to invert the selection, hit the delete key, and now I have my upper leg with the rounded bottom there at the knee. And now I have my two separate pieces, my upper leg and my lower leg. But more importantly, I have that perfectly circular overlap right at the knee that'll give me that really nice wide range of motion and a clean joint when this is rigged. Now let's look at doing that same process in Illustrator. It's similar, just a little bit different. So in this case, we have this left arm that needs to be divided into an upper arm and a lower arm. So let's start by isolating this arm layer by option clicking on the eyeball. We also need to turn on our markers so we can see those. And we're going to start by grabbing the rectangle tool, and we're going to click and drag a rectangle right up again halfway, just like we did with the rectangular marquee tool in Photoshop, halfway through that circular marker. Now in this case, Illustrator really helps us by snapping to that point. And then we're going to select those two layers and then go over to the properties here. Now we're going to go down to the Pathfinder, and we're going to choose the Divide option, and that's going to create that group that now has these separate pieces. So to start with, we can delete the piece that we used to make the divide, and we just need to make a separate layer here and call that A left arm upper. And we'll click and drag the upper piece into that layer. And then this one we will call left arm lower. And we'll just drag this path out of that and get rid of that group. So we just have the two layers, upper and lower. So now we have our two separate pieces, but we need to add in our circular overlap. So we're going to grab our regular selection tool and we're going to select our marker for our joint here. We're going to Command C to copy it. And then we're going to go, let's start with the upper arm. Then we're going to select the upper arm layer and we're going to Shift Command V to paste that into this layer. Now we need it to be the same color as the arm. So we're just going to grab the eyedropper, select that color, and we've now turned this. Let's turn our markers off here. And now we've added that shape to the upper arm and created that circular overlap. Now in this case, these arms are very geometric, so they everything lines up perfectly. But if you're creating this kind of circular overlap on an arm that isn't so geometrically perfect, you may want to use the Shape Builder tool, select the two layers, and draw with the Shape Builder to combine those up, which would then allow you to zoom in and clean up any mess you might end up with. And even I've got a little bit of mess here. If we zoom in here, that's not too bad, but you can see that there's like a couple of anchor points here, and they might be offset a little bit. They might be a little bit messy. You could come in once you've done the Shape Builder and you could clean those up and get rid of the extra anchor points and smooth out the junction between the arm and the semicircle for the circular overlap. Now, we don't really need to do that here. We can leave this just as it is, but you might find that useful if you need to do a little bit of cleanup. So just be aware of that wonderful Shape Builder tool and the ability to kind of turn this into one shape, clean up any mess. We don't need to do that here. We can just leave that as it is. Now the cool thing is here that we can just go right to the lower arm now, and once again Shift Command V to paste that same shape in because it's still in our clipboard. And again, we can just grab the eyedropper, grab the color of our arm, and now we're all set with our upper arm and our lower arm. And again, we have the perfectly circular overlap at the elbow, which will make this a nice clean joint when it begins to bend. So note that both of these techniques require that you have those marker guides marking out your joints with perfect circles. Remember too that you're going to need those for the rigging process, so don't delete them. Make your markers, keep your markers. They'll help you both with dividing up your character, creating the circular overlaps, and in the rigging process.